Hi, I'm Miss Roz. Today we are going to be making lemon squares. So first I need to preheat my oven to 375, and then I'm also going to grease a square pan, 8 by 8 square pan before I start. This recipe that I have is used for the 8 by 8 square pan. If you want to make the 9 by 13 pan size, I would just double the recipe, and then you can use the 9 by 13 pan. So the ingredients that I need for this recipe is going to be 1 stick of butter, or as the recipe says, half a cup of butter, which is also equal to 8 tablespoons. I also need a 1/4 cup of some powdered sugar or confectioner sugar. And then I also need a cup of some flour. So here's my flour. And I also need a little salt. Alright, so that's actually going to be for the crust of the lemon squares. And then I also need stuff for the filling. Right, so I need 2 eggs for the filling. I also need a cup of some sugar, regular granulated white sugar. I'm going to use a half a lemon for this, as well as I'm going to use this to zest the outside, but then I also need 3 tablespoons, so whatever lemon juice my lemon provides, in addition to some bottled lemon juice to fulfill those 3 tablespoons. And then I also need 3 tablespoons of some flour. Right, so my oven is preheating. I'm sorry, it should have been 350, not 375. And then I'm going to actually start, let's get this crust going, right? So the crust is the first thing that needs to be done because it needs to bake. You're going to bake this twice, so you're going to bake the crust first. And while I'm waiting for the crust to bake, I'm going to then, I'll make the filling that goes with this. And then hopefully by the time I'm done making the filling, the crust will be ready, and then I can add the filling and bake the whole thing together. Alright, so I have my butter, and then my 1/4 cup of powdered sugar. Right, so I'm going to add that in there. Right, my butter should be nice and soft, room temperature, right, so that I can mix it like so. And then once I get all of the sugar mixed, right, I'm actually going to add that pinch of salt that I need. I'm just literally going to take a pinch of salt. Now, generally speaking, when we use butter in baking specifically, it's supposed to be unsalted butter. However, I know a lot of people who buy salted butter and kind of just forget to pay attention. So number one, make sure and check to see whether or not your butter is salted. If it is unsalted, right, then that's good because that's typically what most baking recipes are assuming. Right? If it's salted butter, it's fine. Just don't add, typically you just don't add the salt when the recipe suggests the salt. Right? Typically for baking recipes, you'll add about 1/4 teaspoon of salt for every stick of butter, or half a cup of butter. Right? So if you're using salted butter, just eliminate the salt from the recipe so that it doesn't, it's not overly salty. Okay. All right. Now that I have mixed in my sugar with my butter, right, I'm going to then add my flour. However, I want to be able to sift my flour. Right? Sifting the flour helps to break up any lumps. Right? So this is my sifter. You might have a plastic one. You might have the kind of the cylinder one where you crank it, or you can like squeeze the handle and the flour or whatever it is comes out. Right? So I'm going to actually take about half this flour and sift it over. Right? This crust that I'm making, the bottom portion of this cookie, is what I like to is very similar to a shortbread. Right? So once I've done that, I'm going to just carefully mix this together, right? And it's going to kind of bring together a kind of thick crust or thick cookie dough, right? And like I said, very similar to what kind of like a shortbread cookie is like. All right, so once my flour is incorporated, I'll add the remainder of the flour. Now keep in mind that butter does have some moisture in it, right? So we're still kind of being light and gentle with the mixture because I am adding that flour and I don't really want to overdevelop that gluten. All right. But after this is all incorporated, all right, I'm going to add the rest of that flour in and sift it. I forgot to, but you can also sift the powdered sugar if you would like. Sometimes that clumps up as well. And then just mix everything together to create this crust. Okay, and then once this all kind of comes together, I am then going to transfer it to my square pan. And you can use a metal spatula, but over time of making this, I actually find that just using your hands is probably the easiest way to kind of spread this about in your pan. So here you go. There's my square pan, and then I'm going to, it should have been greased already. I'm going to scrape out all the extra. And then I'm just going to push this down into the pan. Right, just use your hands. Right, and then you're just kind of creating the crust. Kind of similar to a pie crust, but this is much softer than a pie crust. Keep sticking. Right, and then just spread it out so it covers the whole bottom of your pan. Alright, and so once you kind of get this all down, created the crust here, you're going to bake it. I would bake it for about 10 to 12 minutes. Okay, so it's just going to set your crust a little. Alright. Just trying to make it as even as possible so that it bakes evenly. If you want it to be a little kind of more even, you can use your rubber scraper now that it's kind of spread out more evenly. Like so. Okay. Alright, so I'm just going to wash my hands and get full of butter. Alright, and then I'm going to throw this into my 350 oven for about 10 to 15 minutes, or 10 to 12 minutes. Keep in mind that depending on your pan, if you have a pan that is darker, so you'll notice mine was clear, it was glass. If you have a darker pan, you might want to kind of keep it at 10 minutes. You always want to kind of lower the temperature just a smidge because because dark pans tend to generate heat faster, and so just like if I were to wear a black shirt out into the sun, it would generate. I would get hotter quicker. Same thing with baking. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to the kind of pan that you're using. All right. So now that that's in there, I'm gonna now work on the filling. So I'm going to mix together my 2 eggs. So crack my eggs. Make sure that they're good. I don't have any shells into it, and that they're not bad. They don't smell bad. All right. And then I'm going to put that into here. And then I need my whisk. And then I'm going to actually throw in my sugar as well. And then I'm actually, before I mix this together, I'm going to just work with my lemon first. I need the zest of the lemon, which is the outer portion of the lemon. Okay? Because that's kind of where all the tanginess is, right? That's where all the flavor comes from, actually, is the outside of the rind, right? So I have a grater, okay? It's called a microplane or a zester or a grater. There's a lot of words for it. But what happens is if I use this, right, and I'm going to just go to the outside of my lemon, and it's going to just take off that thin layer of the lemon, right? And that's what you want. That's where all the flavor comes from, right? So if you're doing this 8x8 recipe, right, you can do just half a lemon of the zest, right? If you're doing the 9x13, so if you're going to double it, I would use a whole lemon, the whole lemon rind. Right? If you use the whole lemon for just the 8x8, it's going to be very, very tart. Right? And so you'll also notice that the outside, after I've kind of taken the shiny part off, you end up with this kind of whitish part on the outside from taking off that shiny portion. This is what we call the pith of it. And this, if you get too much of the white, ends up starting to taste very bitter, right? So you're going to want to just take off, you want just the shiny part of the lemon peel, right? So I'm going to just, right? You may notice, if you watch any videos or other people who use it, sometimes people will grade this way so that it comes down. I find that doesn't work as well unless I'm like trying to grate it on top of something. I'd like to do it this way so that I kind of have a tray, so when I go to grate it, it all collects in the tray, and then I can put it all into the bowl, and I'm not getting zest everywhere. All right, now I also need the juice from this lemon, right? You could use a juicer, right? I have this kind of juicer. I also have like an electric juicer, but since I'm only just doing this one lemon, I'm actually going to just do it by hand. So I actually take a fork, and what I do is I like to just use it because it helps me to twist the inside of the lemon to get some of that juice out, and then I just start to squeeze. Right? You'll notice that the lemon the cut part of my lemon is kind of up and not down into the bowl, because what I want to do, what I'm trying to prevent, is any of the lemon seeds getting into my juice. Right? If that happens, it's fine. Just fish out the lemon seeds. But this helps to kind of prevent that from happening. Right? Now, lemon is super acidic. Right? So if you have a cut on your hand, please be very careful while you're using the lemon because it's going to burn that cut. Right? If you have a cut and you weren't aware of it, you're going to be aware of it after squeezing out the lemon juice. Okay. So just keep squeezing until you don't think you have any more lemon juice left. All right. And I'm just going to wash my hands because, again, that lemon juice is very acidic, so I don't want to, rub my eye by accident and get lemon juice in my eye. All right. And then this lemon juice, just to kind of measure it out, Typically, one lemon is going to give you between 3 and 4 teaspoons, or I'm sorry, tablespoons of juice. So this one's going to give me, so my half a lemon typically gives me about 2 tablespoons worth of juice. Yep. So that means that, and I've added the zest with it. Right. So what I need is, I need that other tablespoon of juice. Now, you could juice the other half of the lemon and do it that way. However, I didn't buy enough lemons to do that, so I'm just going to substitute that last tablespoon with some lemon juice from a bottle. Right? And then that's perfectly good. All right. Now, right, I'm going to mix this all up. What I really want to focus on, right, is making sure that this sugar gets nice and dissolved. Right, so see, I'm just breaking up my eggs. There we go. And I want to mix this really well so that I'm dissolving the sugar and it's nice and smooth and that there's no lumps in my sugar. All right, in the mixture. All right, so just keep mixing it around. Grab the sides if necessary. Right, and then once you kind of think that that sugar is starting to dissolve a little, right, and it's nice and smooth, right, I'm going to add my flour. So my flour is going to help thicken it, but instead of adding it all together, I'm going to sprinkle some in, and then I'm going to mix it, right, because what I want to do is make sure that that flour does not clump up in my mixture, because I want to keep my mixture nice and smooth, right, so add a little more flour, mix it around. All right, add a little more flour. There we go. All right. There we go. All right, so what you want to do is just make sure that it's all nice and mixed together. All right, now I'm just going to set this aside. Now I'm just waiting for a couple more minutes. I still have a couple more minutes on the crust. All right, so just while we're waiting for the crust to finish up, I am going to grab a cooling rack because that crust is going to be hot. Right, and so I don't want to put it directly on my counter. I don't want to ruin my counters. Right, so I'm going to put that down here just so that I have something to put it on. And then I'm also going to get 2 pot holders so I don't burn myself. Right, just so that I'm setting myself to get ready. But then while I'm waiting, I'm just going to talk about the finished product just so that you kind of have an idea. Number one, you can stick a toothpick or whatever down into it. However, it's not really going to come out the same way as if like you did it with brownies. But you will notice that the edges of it are going to be a little on the browner side, and they may pull away from the um, the the edges. Right, that's probably the most common way to kind of see if it's done. And then the other one is just kind of touching the inside middle part to see if it springs back. Right, because this is not your typical kind of like more cakey cookie. It's a little different in terms of looking at how it's finished. But generally speaking, you can tell if the inside of it is set because if the middle still kind of jiggles, that means it's not quite set and it's not quite completely finished. All right, so actually I'm going to take this out. It's about to go off. All right. All right, so here is my crust. Okay, so there's my crust. It may be look a little wet, which is okay, but I'm going to add my lemon mixture to it. So I just kind of mixed it a little again, a little more. I'm just going to grab my rubber scraper and just scrape everything out over crust. Right, and then I'm gonna just throw it back into the oven. Right, pay attention and make sure don't forget that the outsides are gonna still be really hot. So grab your hot holders again, and now I'm gonna put this in here and I'm gonna bake it for about 25 minutes. Right, and then check it at 25 minutes. Okay, and so that is lemon bars, right, or lemon squares, and then there's also um, the option to do the brownies with the other video. All right, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again. Thank you.